We all have to mute.
So, hi everyone. This is Len Cicio, and this is a topic that I have really loved. I was always fascinated by the stars and astronomy, and this is something that I started looking at when I was like 16, 17 years old. And it was a book that E.W. Bullinger did called The Witness of the Stars. So, the title of my whole teaching is The Heavens Declare the Glory of God. And I just want to give you a little background because this whole study goes back even before people came on the earth. God did this whole fantastic artwork in the sky and in the star's name. So I'm going to just give a little background, which I think is good to have. But there's only so far we can go back because a lot of it is tradition that was passed on by word of mouth. So we're going to get into that. Um, the person who started this all was Frances Rolleston. And she was a 19th century linguist and a scholar. And she wrote a book called Mazzaroth, Mazzarroth. And Mazzaroth in Hebrew refers to the zodiac, the stars in the constellation. And this took her about 50 years to put together. I didn't realize that. I said, my God, she was a young girl. And but it took 50 years because she took all the notes from people like Al-Bumazar. I love these names. Al-Bumazar, he was the Arab astronomer to the caliphs of Granada, and this was in 850 AD.
Hmm.
He had all of these different names of the stars in astronomy in Arabic. Also, there were the what was known as the tables, and they were drawn by Ulag Bey, and he was a Tartar prince and astronomer around 1450 AD. So the Arabian astronomy was passed down from the earliest of times. They kept these records. And there was a reason why they were able to do this. So we're going to explain that to you. Also, Josephus, who lived at the time of Christ, he was a Jewish historian. And we get a lot of our information about the Herods and what was going on at the time through Josephus. He wrote that it was passed down from old Jewish traditions in their names. So, where did the Arabic all come in? Ancient Persian and Arabian traditions say that it was the invention of Adam, Seth, and Enoch. So, again, we're going to go back a little further and we'll look at Daniel chapter 2 in verse 48. It says, Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over all the whole province of Babylon and chief of the governors and all the wise men of Babylon. So the wise men of Babylon, they were the top class, and that included the magicians, the sorcerers, the astronomers, the astrologers. They were all in this group. And the astrologers, they were in a class all by themselves. Okay. Thomas Hyde, who was an eminent Orientalist, and an Orientalist, they studied the Asian languages and the culture. Okay. He was a linguist and a librarian, and he studied these Asian languages. Now, he goes even further back to this Arab Christian historian, Abul Farag. You love these names. Name my kid Abul Farag. What a name. So Abul Farag, okay, this Christian historian that lived around 1126 to 1286, he said that Zoroaster, the Persian, was a pupil of Daniel who predicted to the Magians, the astronomers of Persia, about a star that would appear and would notify the birth of a mysterious child whom they were to adore. Also, in his writings, Zoroaster, he wrote about a new star that was to appear in the sign Virgo. So you can see, I'm giving you all these names so you can see how reliable this really is. Daniel was the one that taught them all the detail that was in the astronomy. And the Arabs they just kept these records. They were really good at keeping all these records going through time. And Frances Rolleston took these notes, she researched them, and she put them all together in her book that was called Mazareth, which E.W. Bullinger then took. You see how it's all going through? He took them all and he organized them because the way that Frances Rolleston wrote them, she wrote them in a very scholarly way for scholars to really understand. He took it all and then he organized it into categories that it flowed and was understandable for people like you and me to read. Also, according to Ptolemy, and Ptolemy lived at 150 AD, he was a Greco-Roman mathematician, an astronomer, an astrologist, a geographer, a music theorist, and he greatly influenced Copernicus and Johannes Kepler. He said that the zodiac was said again to be by, he quoted this other guy, Hipparchus, who was in 130 BC, who was considered to be the founder of trigonometry. And this is what Hipparchus said as pertaining to the stars and the signs. He said they're of unquestioned authority, unknown origin, and unsearchable antiquity. So you see, it goes really far back. They had a certain amount of knowledge to it, but not all of it. Sir William Drummond, he said that the traditions of the Chaldean astronomy seem the fragments of a mighty system fallen into ruin. Okay. So here then we get, like I explained, E.W. Bullinger's book, Frances Rolleston's book that he took it from, and he corresponded with her. She was alive at his time. So I'm looking at these people and their references and who they were, and I trust them, especially after reading E.W. Bullinger's book. I can see the detail in that it is very much right on. So we're going to go down into that rabbit hole and we're going to explore that world of unknown origin and unsearchable antiquity. And we're going to see it open up in God's words in scripture, that it is there. Okay. And we're going to look at Psalms 19, and you're going to really understand these verses in a whole different way when it opens up. It says, the heavens, in verse 1, declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The words for declare are telling, and it means to, it says, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Showeth is to rehearse. It implies repetition. It is setting forth. And the firmament in Hebrew is rakia, R-A-Q-I-A, and it refers to the expanse or the spread out surface. In modern terms, you would say the sky, and it's a dome-like expanse or a vault, okay, that was created to separate the waters above from the waters below. The expanse is pretty big, okay? So the firmament showeth his handiwork. It is rehearsing, implying, repeating something. And it says, day unto day, uttereth speech. The word for uttereth is neighbor. And neighbor in Hebrew means to constantly pour forth. It's telling forth or it's prophesying. Okay. It says after that, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech, in verse 3, nor language where their voice is not heard. A voice, I always think of a voice as I'm speaking. It's an audible voice. What is this voice that they're speaking? So their voice is not heard or their sound. So how can the heavens speak? How can they tell forth prophecy? How can they give a voice that's coming out that is not audible? We're going to find out a little more. I'm pulling you in the rabbit hole. So in verse 4, it says, their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words, which are their sayings, their teachings, to the end of the world. So think of that huge expanse, and God put these constellations, these signs, these stars, and there's a voice that's going out. There's a purpose. The line is their inheritance. In Hebrew, it refers to a measuring or an allotting line. In the Septuagint, the Syrian, and the Vulgate that go back further, it reads voice, voices. There's a voice. Then it says, the second part, in them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. According to Bible Hub, it's a tent chamber. It's a very poetic form. So think of the sun retiring after its day's journey, or the dawn of the day, drawing back the curtains for his departure. It would be a concept that all the nations of the ancient world were familiar with. E.W. Bullinger said the signs of the zodiac are called the houses of the sun because in them he dwells and he moves. And that is such a fantastic picture to me because I walk in the park every day and I have the Henry Hudson Bridge, I have the waters, the ducks, I go through the baseball field, I go into the hills, and this is my journey. God's is a little bigger than my park. He dwells and he moves in this expanse, in the heavens. He takes his journey where he tours and he goes through. In Psalms, verse 4, it says, their line is gone out. The word line is kav, K-A-V, and it's a measuring line going out, as I said, translated as a voice. It's in the singular that's being put forth for the plural. Why? Because we heard that it's their teachings, it's their sayings that are being poured forth. It's their prophetic words. They don't teach men with an audible voice, but they're speaking to the ears with a visible one. Isn't that incredible? It's a visible portrayal that these teachings are giving. It's in lines or in writing or in delineations. It's the act of outlining or representing something with lines or words. So their line or their words, the order, the course, and the significant actions and the operations of these stars by which they declare and reveal their author's thoughts and mind to all creation. That's something that, I can draw something and people can do. I've done a series of certain images and they will tell a story. But this is in a whole other category. It's to the ends of the world that there is a visual picture that is teaching and telling a story. In verse 5, it says, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. The chamber, again, these are all poetic words, is a bridal canopy, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. So the sun is compared to a well-conditioned athlete who comes out in full vigor and ready to begin a race with its course. So this majestic appearance as it emerges on the horizon, the sun, with intense light, heat, and glory, is compared to a bridegroom in his glory once he's married, coming out of that bridal canopy. Fantastic visual. And in verse 6, it says, his going forth is from the end of the heaven and his circuit onto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. So the sun's daily path across the sky, from a human perspective, it shows God's power, his wisdom, his omnipresence, a presence that cannot be hid. And the daily circuit is his creative force going out with its life-giving energy. These are all the meanings behind it. So it's a visual voice. So we've been talking about astronomy and a visual voice. The second part then in verse 7, it shifts, and we're going to get a literary voice that we can hear and read. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The sinner returning to God returns as the sun in the heavens returns to its course. That's converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. It represents the message, a witness of the stars, or a witness pouring forth God's message and his thoughts. It is sure and it is faithful as the sun is and appearing and returning to its course and circuit. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. What did we read just before about the sun? It gives light. Okay, so they're really paralleling each other when you really break it down and look at it. And it says in verse 11, moreover, by them or in them is thy servant warned or taught, made to light. And in keeping of them, there is great reward. So it's similar to someone observing or watching as an observer the heavenly bodies that are teaching and giving forth a message. Now I'm creeping you into this with this background. I think it's really important just to see the reference behind all this. In Isaiah 40:26 in the NIV, it says, lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name. He gave them a name, and it's not hidden. He revealed it. Psalm 147:4 says, he telleth the number of the stars. He giveth them all their names. Let me tell you something. I can remember a few things. Like I'm reading this, and I can remember a few of the signs and the stars. But the whole host, the whole expanse, God numbers them exactly to the T, and they each have a name. We don't have all the names because they have been lost in tradition as the written scriptures came in. They kind of forgot the Hebrews. Not forget totally. There are some of the names, but we don't have them all. That why, thank God for the Arabic astronomers that kept a lot of these names. And the book of Job, and that's considered to be the oldest book in the Bible. Now, I looked this up on Google. This is a little AI now telling me this. AI says it was written, the book of Job, between the 6th and 4th century BC, during the Persian period, though some scholars debate older origins. The Bible Hub says it dates back to the patriarchal period around 2100 to 1800 BC. You have a little differences here. The Bible Project says the prose, the frame, and narrative suggest a post-Babylonian period after 540 BC. So you see, no one has the exact numbers. There's a little variation, but we do know, we can say it is the oldest book in the Bible. And in Job 9:9, he says, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and I hope I say this name right, the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. Arcturus, the Hebrew name for that is Ash, A-S-H, and it's still connected to the Great Bear, okay? or it also means the greater sheepfold. Orion in Hebrew is Kasil, the strong one or coming prince. The Pleiades is Kime, it's the congregation of the judge. And we'll see, and I can't get into this one, but it's now talking about the congregation, the people, right? In Job 38:32, God has a little conversation with Job, and he goes, Canst thou bring forth Mazareth in his season? Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Hmm? Can you do that? It's like, Mazareth again is the Hebrew word for the 12 constellations of the zodiac that are related to that word. Now, the word zodiac is from the Greek zoidakos, and it's from a primitive root of the Hebrew sodi and Sanskrit, which was an ancient Indo-Aryan language or Iranian. It says that this arose in Northwest South Asia. That's Aryan, or the inner Iranian. In ancient Sanskrit, the word for the zodiac means away. Nothing to do with living creatures as Zoe, we think of in the Greek, Zoe is life, but it's a way. It's used of the way or path in which the sun moves among the stars in the course of the year. So the path the sun makes among the stars is called the ecliptic. From the earth, it appears that the heavens, together with the sun, revolve in a circle once in 24 hours. The difference in time for the stars in going around is 1/12 of the time, part of the whole circle in each month. 1/12. So if you divide the circle in the heavens into 12 parts, the sun appears to move each month through one of them. The 12 parts are distinguished by pictures and names from the very earliest of times. They are preserved today in our almanacs. These signs are known among all nations throughout all ages, going back to Egypt and Babylon. So there had to be a common original source, as Ptolemy had said. There's something further back from the Chaldeans that's been lost. There's nothing in the stars that show they form a pattern or a design as we see. You just see the stars and the heavens. So the images, like for example, Virgo, you see a woman, but the stars don't really line up to show the detail and outline. It doesn't show that. So what it tells us is that the pictures were made first by God so that they could be identified and remembered and handed down to generations. So you had the picture, and the picture would go into those signs and those stars so they could see, oh, that's Virgo. Oh, that's Libra. So God revealed all that, as we said, to tradition, to Adam, Seth, and Enoch, according to Josephus. Okay, so who are these stars? How are they identified and remembered? Who are they identified with? Again, scripture tells us in Genesis 37:9, talking about Joseph. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. So Joseph would be the 12th one. If you read in Genesis 49, the blessings of Jacob, you will see some of the signs and those images mentioned as he speaks to his sons, because the 12 signs are associated with the 12 sons of Jacob. So all these pictures in the stars tell a story. In Genesis 1:14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. The word signs in Hebrew is oth, O-T-H. It means things to come. There's another form of that Hebrew word, athah, A-T-H-A-H. It means something or someone to come. There are over 100 names that we have of the stars that are preserved in the Arabic and Hebrew names. So the ancient star pictures tell a story. They have an inaudible voice that gives a teaching, a prophetic voice of someone or some things to come. So what are they pointing to? What are they repeating in their prophecy over and over to the ends of the world? Well, they expound on the great prophecy and hope for all mankind and creation. And we're going to see that in the names. And that's in Genesis 3:15. Now we know that prophecy, it says in Corinthians, is supposed to be for edification and comfort and encouragement. We know that they can be warnings, but this prophecy is the prophecy of all prophecy, because when it's spoken to this being, it will give him chill to the very core of his being. And it says that God speaks to the serpent and he goes, I have a little word of prophecy for you. I'm going to give you a little prophetic word, dear. And he says to the serpent, and I will cause hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. So they will show the stars in their Hebrew and their Arabic names a coming Messiah, one who would suffer, and that his glory that would follow. There are 48 of these stars in the heavens, 12 signs with each sign, 12 signs within each of these with constellations, 3 constellations. So what's a constellation is a group of these stars that form one of them. There's 3 and there's the sign, okay? So the 3 constellations that are in each sign plus the sign is 4. 4 times 3 equals 12. So you have the sign, the one sign, and we said there's 12 of them, and there's 3 constellations in each, so you have 4. 4 times 3 equals 12. Now, is it just a casual number? It's not. 12 denotes governmental perfection. You have 12 months in the year. You have 12 tribes. You have 12 apostles. You have 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. It represents a structured, divinely organized, and complete cycle of time, power, and divine presence. You have 12 oxen and platters offered during the tabernacle dedication. So you have within those, there's 12, 4, 8, 12. You have 3 great books with each of the 4 signs. And book 1 is the Redeemer, which is in Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. In book 2, you have the Redeemed, Capricorn, the sea goat, Aquarius, the water bearer, Pisces, the fishes. Think about fishes. Christ told them to cast their nets into the sea, pick up the fishes. The fishes represented people. And that's used a number of times in scripture. And then you have 4 Aries, the ram or the lamb. Book 3, you have the Redeemer and his second coming. And that's tied in with Taurus, the bull, Gemini, the twins, Cancer, the crab, and Leo, the lion. So if we have a circle, where do you break into it? Because a circle is a never-ending structure, okay? There has to be a beginning and there has to be an end. So the first would logically start with the first prophecy in Genesis 3:15. It's the sign Virgo. And the last would be with his glory in Leo. Now, As the scholar and linguist Francis Rolleston studied from the Arabic astronomers, and like I said, her reputation was very firm, very solid. And there was a British astronomer and a physicist, Joseph Norman Lockyer. And Francis Rolleston stated that the great Sphinx, we're getting into the Sphinx now, in the summer solstice, 4,000 years before Christ, it's sealed by the union of Virgo, the head of the woman, and Leo, the body of the lion. Now, I'm going to show you how this is so tight because the junction of Virgo and Leo is marked by the tail end of Leo. The very tail end of Leo is the star Denabala. Now, this is Arabic. It's not Italian. It's not Denabala. Denabala. It's not Denabala. It's Arabic, okay? It's from the Arabic, and it means Ahanab al-Assad, or the tail of the lion. Francis Rolleston says it means the Lord or judge who comes quickly. And that tail end, right above that or near it, the closest one is, guess what? Virgo. That's closest to it. The word sphinx in Egyptian, it means to bind closely together. What is it binding closely together? The figure with the head and the figure of the head of the woman and the body of a lion. In Egyptian, it also means a living image. Now, get this. In the ancient temple of Esna in Egypt, a sphinx with the head of the woman and the body of the lion is actually placed between the signs of Virgo and Leo. What's that about? So you see, I can give you certain information about this, and I'm trusting these resources, but there's only so far we can go back. We can't ask the people who drew the temple in Esna and what happened before that. It just goes way back too far. But the great mystery is that it's a symbol, and it binds the two ends of the heavens, the beginning of Virgo and the ending of Leo. The truth that God passed on to Adam, Seth, and Enoch was later distorted after the written revelation came down to the Jews. It was lost in its original interpretation, and the nations invented, different meanings out of their thinking and their thoughts and their hearts. So the Greek mythology is only one of the many stories that distorted this truth, but you will find parts of the truth in it. So from being about the one who would come and deliver mankind, what does astrology do? It's all about you, Michelle. The sign is about you and what's going to happen. Or it's about Eric. No, it's not about me and you. It's about someone who's going to come, because you and I cannot restore creation and we cannot restore mankind, you know? So it's wonderful as this starts opening up. So it's this story that was written in the stars. So now we can begin to open the book and let Virgo show us the beginning of the great prophecy and show that story in its original names and the meanings that God intended to reveal. So we go back again to Virgo in Genesis 3:15. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this is the prophetic revelation that's declared. It's the root of all ancient traditions and mythologies, and it's where the hope of all mankind and creation lies. So I got it here. Let's see what I have it right here. This is the sign of Virgo. Let's see if I can get it up here. I think, can you see that? You can't answer me, but I think it's pretty clear. Go, okay? That's the sign Virgo. So in Hebrew, the sign was called Bethulah, Bethulah, and it means a virgin. In Arabic, it means a branch. Virgo is a woman with a branch. Is it here? A branch in her right hand and some ears of corn in her left. And there's a twofold testimony in this. Latin Virgo means a virgin. Virga means a branch. In Arabic, Sunbul was an ear of corn. Now, it just so happens that the brightest star that is in this ears of corn that she holds is called Semach, Tsemech in Hebrew. I think in Arabic it's Zemach, Zemach, but it's an ancient name that's handed down to us in all the star images. Here it is. In Arabic, Al-Zemach, the branch. The modern name, the modern Latin name is Spica, and it means an ear of corn. So in Genesis 3:15, the focus is on this woman, as in Isaiah 7:14. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. So we're going to look, you see really here right now, the very, very first constellation is Coma, and it will point to a child as the great subject. Now, I want to explain this to you. Here's Coma, which is with the child, the woman, and then it's the child on her lap. So the first constellation is Coma, and it will point to the child as the great subject. Getting back to the branch, I told you that it was Semach, Tsemech, okay? It occurs 4 times, this word, in the Old Testament. Remember I said that it means a branch in the Arabic? So there's 20 Hebrew words that are translated branch, but only one of them in Hebrew is used exclusively of the Messiah. It's Semach, and that name is in the ears of corn. Jeremiah 23:5 says, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch. That is that word Semach. And a king shall reign and prosper. So there's 4 different verses. Think of the 4 Gospels now, okay? A king shall reign. In Matthew, we have the genealogy of a king. It also says, Behold thy king in Matthew 21:9. And when you read Matthew, you will see many scriptures and accounts that will relate to him as a king. Second, Zechariah 3:8. Behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. Again, that word branch is that name of the brightest star, Semach, that's in there. Mark, he's presented as a servant. He's addressed as Lord in the other 3 Gospels 73 times, and in Mark 2 times. And in Mark, we see the focus on his fatigue, his sympathies, his compassion, his composure, him seeking solitude, his wonder, his grief, his sighing, his anger, the details of his actions and his activities as the servant. And third time, Zechariah 6:12, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man, whose name is the branch. Semach again. This is not coincidence, okay? And in Luke, he is the perfect man. He's the friend of publicans and sinners, the outcasts of society. He went beyond the limits of national prejudice. In Luke alone, it gives the parable of the Good Samaritan. The many references to women, so alien to Jewish custom. Names mentioned, you would not mention the names, Elizabeth, Anna, the ministering women, Martha, Mary, Joanna, Susanna, all of that. And then in Isaiah 4:2, in that day shall the branch of Jehovah be beautiful and glorious. So here, he's a divine being. The star in the arm that's carrying the branch is Al-Moridin, who shall come down or who shall have dominion. That is the name. And in Comer, as I said, it's a child and a woman. The ancient name is Coma in Hebrew, and it means the desired or the longed for. In Haggai 2:7, it says, the desire of all nations shall come. Okay. There is a Greek story to this. Let's see if I could I just wanted to read this because we're seeing it as coma with the woman and the child. But there is, again, how mythology comes in and mythology changes uh, a lot of things. So the Hebrew name was coma, but the Greeks had a word for hair, come, C-O-M-E. This again is transferred to the Latin coma, C-O-M-A. And thus, if you look it up online, it says coma Berenice, or the hair of Bernice. It comes down to us today as the name of this constellation and gives us a woman's wig instead of the Blessed One. There was a story about Berenice that when her husband went out to fight, that she gave her hair, she took her hair as a wig, as a gift for him when he came back. And the wig was stolen. And she was so upset, Berenice, that they gave the story that, oh, I think it was Apollo or Zeus took the wig and he set it in the heavens. All right, yeah, not exactly. And I'm going to show you how this was a distortion. Again, it's the desire of all nations, coma. Most constellations have one or two stars of the first or the second magnitude. The lower the magnitude, the brighter it is. The lower the number. And then a greater number or less variety of lesser stars. This constellation has no one bright star, but so many of the fourth and fifth magnitude, 43 stars altogether, with 10 of them of the fourth magnitude and the remainder going down, fifth and sixth. This constellation, the sign in Virgo, would probably have been the star that the Magi saw because of all the stars around Coma, making it so bright. Balaam's prophecy in Numbers 24:17 refers to the literal star and the person, the desired one. He was referring to there shall come a star out of Jacob, the sign, the star, and a scepter shall rule out of Israel. So you have the star tied in with the person who would rule. Okay. The new stars have appeared again and again. It's not unusual. In 125 BC, a star that was so bright that it appeared in the daytime was seen by Hipparchus in 190, 120 BC, and he was regarded as the greatest astronomer of antiquity. Okay, he discovered the precession of the equinoxes and the slow shift in the orientation of Earth's rotational axis, and he compiled the first comprehensive star catalog of the Western world that's been handed down. For the new star, which show the latitude, and that's a view from your location, which part of the encircling sky that you're able to see, passing at that time, immediately overhead at midnight, every 24 hours, the latitude, while the prophecy would give the longitude as the land of Jacob. So if you have the latitude and you have the longitude, it's just a matter of observation for the Magi to find the place where it would be vertically and be able to find the spot of the birth of him who the sign was telling about. So I'm just giving you kind of general information on that. It was a new star, which I said is not an unusual phenomenon. Ignatius, the bishop of Antioch in 69 AD, so again, we're giving some references of some notable people. He said, and again, this would have been passed on to him, at the appearance of the Lord, a star shone brighter than all the others. He quotes that much later, but again, it's information that would have been passed down from tradition. Prudentius from 4th century AD. He was a Roman Christian poet, and he was considered to be one of the greatest poets of the late Antioch period. And he was a trained lawyer, and he held a high office in the imperial secretariat in Milan. He was a provincial governor and a prominent figure in the imperial court. He said that not even the morning star was so fair. Archbishop Trench, from 1807 to 1886, very educated and influential churchman, poet, and a historian of languages. He said, "This star I conceive, as so many ancients and moderns have done, to have been a new star in the heavens." So this child, Coma, was the desire of nations, is what? He's the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15 that would be born, a son that would be given. Okay. The next constellation is Centaurus. Now, Centaurus is this lovely centaur that we have here. Okay, Centaurus.
Centaur.
And it means in the celestial atlas, it's a map of the heavens that was drawn by Alexander Jameson from 1882. He drew all the stars that were visible to the naked eye. Okay, this is a picture that he had. The Arabic and the Chaldaic name is Bezeh, B-E-Z-E-H. Hebrew, Beza, very similar. Arabic, Bezeh, B-E-Z-E. And Hebrew is B-E-Z-E-H. And in Arabic, it means the despised. And Isaiah 53:3, he is despised and rejected of men. The constellation has 35 stars, 2 of the first magnitude, 1 of the second, and 6 in the third magnitude. And then there's 9 in the fourth going down. So together with the 4 bright stars that are in this, together with the 4 bright stars that are of the cross, which is beneath it, makes a brilliant show in the southern latitudes. So the brightest star in the horse's forefoot is the ancient name Toliman, Toliman. And it means the heretofore and the hereafter. What does Revelation 1:8 say? I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty. Heretofore, and hereafter. Another name of the constellation in Hebrew is Asmeath, Asmeath, and it means the sin offering. In Isaiah 53:10, it said, yes, it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He shall put him to grief. Now, again, this is where the Greek mythology comes in. The Greek name for it is Chirion, Cherion, and he means the pierced or who pierces. So we're going to see some things taken and carrying in. This goes further. Just listen to this. He was a wise and gentle centaur. In Greek mythology, Chirion was a skilled athlete, hunter, healer, musician, and in the prophetic and prophecy. He was supposed to be immortal, but he voluntarily agreed to die. He was wounded by a poisoned arrow while in conflict with the wild boar, and he transferred his immortality to Prometheus, and he was placed among the stars. Prometheus aided humanity and gave fire as a gift to humanity. So there's these little references here. Mythology, we can see glimpses of the one who is the true prophet, all-wise, powerful healer, doing good, who laid down his life for man and then became rejected and despised. So it is one of the lowest constellations situated immediately over the cross, as I said, that speaks of his death, but he's still seen in the act of destroying the enemy. What did we see here? We see the spear and the shield. That's there, that's coming, okay? So again, it's those two natures. It's that sin offering being despised, and there's also that conquering warrior. So we have like the human and the divine in that. So far we have a woman, a virgin coming, bearing in her branch someone who would be a king, a servant, a man, and a divine king, a divine being, that he would grow from a child, the child on the lap, who would be the desired of all nations, and he would be filled, as we said, with the centaur, with wisdom, and that as a man he would become a sin offering, rejected and despised, with the nature of a divine being and a man. Now, in the last one and the third constellation, it develops even further. We are coming down, we are winding down the stars. So, this one, we have a strong man coming, walking rapidly, okay? Walking rapidly with a spear in his right hand and a sickle in his left. The Hebrew root is bo, B-O, to come. The Greeks called him Bootes, Bootes. And in Psalm 96:13, what do we read? For he cometh. For he cometh to judge the earth. He shall judge the world in righteousness and the people with his truth. In Job 9:9, before when I read, which maketh Arcturus, that word Aish, okay, Orion and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. In all probability, Arcturus would have been the more ancient name before the Greek for Butes. That is the Hebrew name. That's the name of the brightest. Now, the brightest star is called Arcturus, and it's in the knee. The name of the brightest star in the left knee is Arcturus, Arcturus. The ancient Egyptians called him Smat, Smat, one who rules, governs, and subdues. The star that's in the spearhead is Al-Katupos, Al-Katurops. These names, my gosh. The branch treading underfoot. That's something. The star just below the waist on the right side is Mirak, coming forth as an arrow. There's a star in the head, and the star in the head is Nekkar, Nekkar, the pierced. Zechariah 12:10, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him. In Revelation 14, 15, 16, chapter 14, verses 15, 16, it says, and another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. What is he carrying in his hand?
Sickle.
Sickle. Okay. So after being born, grown in power, despised and rejected, he is coming as a strong man in power to judge. The sign Virgo gives an outline that the rest of the books are going to expound on in more detail. So when we read from Psalms 19, the heavens declare, they repeat the glory of God. The firmament, the expanse, is setting forth and showing his handiwork. Day after day is constantly pouring forth and speaking in an inaudible voice, telling and prophesying all this knowledge and information. His story is written in the stars way back before man ever came into being. And it is the message of the greatest hope and the deliverance to all men and creation that we're waiting for, because he is the desired of all nations who is coming. And that's what I wanted to share.